I think it'll vary from school to school, and I think that needs to be monitored very closely. I don't know if it's a straight out yes answer or no answer. I think that it really does vary from school to school, and I think it's more about perhaps the overall load that the boys are doing, not just rugby, because there'll be boys that play rugby, cricket, swimming, and I think that's the concern more so than just the rugby schedule.
Can you give us an idea on the makeup of, say, a boy that's 16 years old and plays the amount of sport that they do? I mean, they must be prone to long-term injury if an accident happens.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the load is too much for them, they're going to land up getting stress fractures and so on and so on. And you have to make sure that you're monitoring that load properly, because otherwise the boys at such a young age, while they're still developing, their bodies will be susceptible to those injuries. And really it's the longevity of those players that we're looking to ensure that is kept well looked after.
Something that's been quite an issue and has been brought up on quite a few times is that once they finish matric and they go into the franchise setup, club coaches and club doctors have to spend quite a few months just fixing all the niggles and things before they can actually start training in the amateur leagues. Why is this so? And it shouldn't actually be the club's responsibilities.
It really shouldn't, and I think the schools should be taking a bit more responsibility to be hiring coaches that are very qualified to look after the boys at that sort of level. And I think the rivalry between the schools is causing so much competition that it's a win at all costs, and the boys land up being almost abused across the board for that reason. So getting to the club level, they have the expertise, and the schools should be doing more to ensuring that those boys are being looked after.
Is that one of the main problems, winning at all costs mentality?
I think so. I think the rivalry between the schools is massive, and I'm not saying that rivalry is bad. I think it's good. I think competition's good, but it's a win at all costs, and more of a concern then becomes the supplements that the boys are using and the lack of their health. That is the concern. It's the winning that really becomes the priority, and that for me is the problem.
And obviously because of the amount of sport they're playing, that mentality, that's where doping happens.
Exactly, and I think again it's the uneducated coaches and teachers. Very often the coaches are just teachers who are around and volunteering, and you have to have the educated coaches, because then they educate the boys as to, well, doping and taking extra supplements might not be beneficial for you. In actual fact, it's probably more harmful to your health, and that education is key, especially with the boys at a young age.
Do you find that parents place a very big emphasis in this whole winning at all costs, doping, and just that pressure that's put on these kids at such a young
Definitely.
age?
I mean, we get phone calls all the time about parents, saying, please, can you test our kids? Which sport will they be better at? And, they're like 12 or 13 years old. And really, we endorse, let the children play as much as they can and what they enjoy. And parents do put a lot of pressure on their kids. And again, I think that, a teenage boy at that age, has enough peer pressure, let alone pressure from his parents, let alone pressure from the coaches. And the very good boys will then land up, doping and taking other supplements to try and, get that extra step ahead or that extra edge.
How do you change that?
Education. I think education of the coaches, education of the boys, to know that, okay, well, if I train right and if I do the right strength and conditioning and the right loading, I will still get better. That I can't take a pill or a supplement to make me better. And it's an education across the board then, I think, from a coaching, from a parent point of view, and across the teams as well. And then monitoring those boys properly, making sure that they are, doing the correct loads of training throughout the week as well.
Is sport too professional at that age for kids? Shouldn't it still be about finding what you like, just enjoying the sport? Because I can't believe that amount of pressure being put on kids is enjoyable. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, that would be ideal. But I think the world we live in, we live in a competitive world, and we want to see winners, and the school environment is that. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I think it needs to be managed better. So yes, it should be about the fun and the enjoyment, but a lot of our development for our national teams happens at a young age as well. So it is a bit of a tug of war effect with that. But I think if the processes were managed and the boys were managed properly, then yes, I think it would be a lot better.
How do we manage them properly?
Again, I think having the educated coaches in the right sort of place, you then monitor those boys' loads in terms of which sports they're doing and how much they're training and how much they're playing. And along with that, their social stresses and their school stresses as well. I mean, these are teenage boys we're talking about, so they have a lot of that as well. And to manage that stuff by monitoring the loads and working out their session load, that'll help us be making sure that we're not overloading the players very much.
In the South African school setup, specifically in rugby, specifically for boys, do you think we place too much emphasis on sports rather than actual academic education?
I do. I think, and it happens from a school level up to a university level as well. And you know, I think the US has a similar problem in their sporting at the university level because they put so much emphasis on their sports. At the end of the day, if these boys or any sort of sporting athletes, students, athletes needs to study, that their career is very short-lived. You know, they have to have an education to be able to move forward after that, and I don't think we place enough emphasis on that on a social level all around.
Do you think we need to change that in South Africa?
I think so, and I think, again, from a proper management process, you know, we can put enough emphasis that the boys are getting a good education, as well as furthering their career in rugby. You know, they can make a career out of rugby or any sports, but what if they don't?
Yeah.
You know, and we hear of so many stories of our professional all across the board, not just rugby specifically, you know, where they, you know, have landed up bankrupt or something. And we have to be sure that we're educating the boys in terms of how to deal with their finances or how to create a career if they don't become rugby players.
Shona, thank you very much for that insight, and we'll definitely be looking at this issue a lot more, and we hope to welcome you back in the studio.
Thanks so much for having me. It was awesome. Thank you.